It's, Thank you, Andrea. It's not a very easy task to introduce this workshop. And in fact, when I was thinking what I could say as a few words of introduction, I was, of course, I felt myself very much constrained by the fact that, after all, my preparation is that of an economist, although I made many attempts to cooperate with other scientists or scholars working on environmental sciences in hydrology. But again, you are always constrained by your former approach. And in fact, when we talk about discounting, of course, economics is mainly challenged as a discipline. Is mainly challenged, although, as Andrea was just noticing now, behind figures, so behind numbers, there are always something else. And in this particular case, economists have to be very careful in using numbers for cost and benefits, because behind these numbers you have those who have other disciplinary approaches. The title of this workshop is rather generally talking about environmental policies. And environmental policies mean a lot of things. It means environmental strategies, means environmental regulation. But I think that when we talk about discounting, we mainly refer to investment projects, not only investment projects concerning having environmental implications, but any type of investment project has an intertemporal dimension, so you need talking about or addressing the issue of discounting. But of course, we are here more concerned about those type of investment projects which have environmental implications. That means that these projects can be more explicitly environment improving projects, or may simply be not in prima facie concern about the environment, but having environmental implications, they also enter into this wide area of environmental policies. Now, what is the main issue here? Basically, the main issue is that we have to compare, when facing investment projects, current known costs and future uncertain benefits. I stress this. We have to approach present and known and future and uncertain, because that is essential. And this is really at the root of the discounting problem, as a problem. As all of you know, the problem is whether or not we should give future benefits the same weight as current costs, whether we should give them a lower weight, that we mean discounting, and if we decide to give a lower weight, at which rate we will give this lower weight. Should this weight remaining constant over time? Should we be increasing, declining? Now, from the economic point of view, but Partha certainly will enter more deeply in this area, I think that economists can use two different views in addressing this issue. They are complementary, after all, because when we economists talk of equilibrium, we find out that eventually in equilibrium these two views are complementary, because eventually they coincide. One is, and this from what I have been able to get from my reading on the recent debate on discounting, they have some implication on this debate. One we view is the idea focusing on productiveness of the investment. So focusing on the idea that giving up resources now in order to invest them is expected to provide some positive rate of return. So this idea of positive rate of return is strictly related to the discount rate. The discount rate is strictly related to the idea of an expected positive rate of return. This, in the economist language, I would say this is a supply type of approach. But then we have another view, which is more complementary in the sense that it refers to demand approach, which focuses on the combination between present and future consumption. And mainly here the problem is how to weight future utilities of consumption compared to the present one. Now we know, we all know, not only economists I believe, that in the literature there are many outstanding scholars, economists, not only economists, think for example Frank Ramsey was a mathematician and a philosopher, that have questioned from an ethical perspective the appropriateness of giving lower weight to future utility, the idea of impatience. Not only Frank Ramsey, but Henry Sidgwick, Roy Harrod, and others. This is a first source of debate. Sorry, but that's you. I think it's me. Sorry, I will close. Wow. Sorry. There is some debate on this point concerning what economists call a pure rate of discount, referring explicitly how to value future utility compared to the present one. And some, these outstanding scholars, but other economists now believe that according to a criterion of intergenerational equity, you should not have a positive rate of discount, or if you can have it, but concerning some radical events like the probability of existing of human beings in the future. But in economic approach, I think it is very important to realize that this is not the only issue at stake. The rate of discount is not, the rate of discount which is proposed to be used in investment project is not the pure rate of discount. It's something more complex. There is something more. And this something more, which is really very important also in the recent debate, as I will try to say in a moment, concern the role of the expected rate of economic growth. Because if you expect a positive rate of economic growth, of course future generations are expected to enjoy a higher level of consumption per capita. It depends here whether we measure economic growth in terms only of consumption per capita or something more complex like a vector of consumption where there are also environmental services. But this is another open issue that I just put there as an element of debate. But of course, if you expect a positive future rate of growth, that means that future generations are expected to enjoy higher consumption per capita, so that by itself justifies a positive rate of discount. But of course, as economists know very well, and Partha probably can say a lot of things on this point, this expected rate of growth must be weighted with something, with the willingness of present generation to substitute present and future consumption. And here there is another area of debate among economists. I don't want to enter, but given that I have just to introduce the topic, this is a topic on which I hope that Partha will come back because he wrote very important things on this point, how to interpret this parameter that you have to use on discounting future rate of growth, which economists call intertemporal elasticity of substitution or elasticity of marginal utility, these technical jargon terms. All these issues are still debated among economists, and if we read what revitalized very recently this issue is precisely the topic of climate change. Because in the climate change we have one representative, the Stern Review, let's take that one, as a representative, the Stern Review 2007, a representative of the view which stresses these aspects of equity, so lower rate of discount, less than the market one, On the other hand, we have a set of critical positions, which I don't want to examine, and Bart again can say something on this point. My reading of this position is not that they do not recognize the importance of ethical conditions, but simply that we have to think also to other aspects when we consider ethical conditions. For example, the fact that the rate of discount cannot have anything to do with what we economists call the opportunity cost of capital, which is determined by the rate of return on alternative investment. Just to put the things in the simplest way, suppose that environment-oriented project should have a lower rate of return because the social rate of discount should be very low. And then you have to support this, to finance this, and you have to go to the market to borrow money to finance it. And the rate of interest is too high, so we'll never finance this type of projects. So it is not that we question ethical issues, but we have to take into account that we are not living in a purely abstract ethical world, but we have to confront this ethical position with the reality also of the market, not only of the market. What I found very interesting in the recent debate on the rate of discount, and these are recent contributions, is that we are trying, at least in the economics, the area of economic analysis, trying to getting out from this dichotomy high-low rate of discount. And these contributions refers to the fact that it may be worth to consider a declining rate of discount. There is a very interesting paper which has been published by, it's a working paper of Resource for the Future. You have a list of prominent economists. The first name is Arrow, and then you have another list of people that have worked on that. And they claim that it may be worth to consider a declining rate of discount. But why? What is interesting, this is why they reach this conclusion. It is interesting because they take explicitly into account the fact that when we're talking about discounting, we are not talking simply comparing current and future, but we are comparing known and unknown. So you have to take uncertainty explicitly into account. And uncertainty can refer to the first view, expected rate of return. So you may have uncertainty concerning expected rate of return. And the second view, we may have uncertainty on the future rate of growth. And these are, there is a very technical type of arguments, maybe some will come back to this discussion, but essentially the result is that in this way, I think to people like Martin Weizmann, like in Europe, Christian Gollier, other people. What is the interesting aspect of this result? That we must take into account the opportunity of uncertain shocks, then the risk of catastrophe event, and then support investment, environment-oriented investment as a high level of insurance against these extreme events. And this concerns in the specific area of climate change. This does not only concern mitigation, but also adaptation. You can choose projects just to insure yourself. And in Venice, we have some example of that. But anyway, these are some introductory words. I take them simply as putting there some of the inputs that comes from, in my view, from economics. But of course, I myself still I feel as an open issue that of bridging a building a bridge between the economic approach and ecological approach, environmental science, engineering approach. Of course, these other disciplines must be concerned with discounting, because discounting can change completely the conclusions about whether or not to choose a project. But then we still have an open problem, how these disciplines can contribute for a better economics framing of the discounting problem. And I personally believe that these workshops will be very important in giving some contribution to this issue. And we have here a number of competent scholars. We are perfectly in a position of provide a positive contribution, and my hope that we will be successful in this endeavor. So thank you for your attention. And now, I don't know, who's chairing? You are chairing it. So if I am chairing, I have to give the floor to Parta. So Parta,